The primary purpose of a presentation is to convince an audience to change or to accept a new idea. Whether trying to raise money, introduce a new health plan to your employees, or show off a brand new product, a presentation is an argument for change. For example, my product is worth funding, or the new insurance policy is better and cheaper, or the quarterly report shows new options in the marketplace. The more successful arguments are made in stages. They begin by showing the current state of affairs, and then, in increments, the benefits of adopting the change, and finally, the happiness, satisfaction, or wealth to be found in the suggested change. Movies are no different. Hitchcock puts situations in Jeff's way to force him to change, or at least to question his assumptions. Here we will track one of Hitchcock's arguments about the possibility for rewarding relationships between men and women, for the changes that might be possible in Jeff's relationship with his girlfriend, Lisa. When Rear Window begins, we learn that Jeff is a man with very set ideas about the relationship, specifically marriage, between men and women. He doesn't think they are possible, at least not with Lisa. In fact, Lisa and Jeff are chalk and cheese. She's a beautiful, well-dressed socialite, and he's an adventurer, happiest tromping through mud, cold, and danger to get his photographs. But they try hard to get this improbable relationship to work. As the movie progresses, we understand more of Jeff's objections to this perfect beauty. If he marries her, he fears his life as a footloose adventurer and action photographer will change into that of a domestic stooge. Hitchcock makes a strong statement that Thorwald's suffocating marriage is what Jeff fears the most. After all, the man trapped in this ghastly marriage escapes only by murdering his wife.
Yeah, can't you just see me rushing home to a hot apartment to listen to the automatic laundry and the electric dishwasher and the garbage disposal and the nagging wife.
Jeff, wives don't nag anymore. They discuss.
That's so. Well, maybe in the high-rent district they discussed. In my neighborhood, they still nag.
Hitchcock's exploration of love and marriage is made by three pairs of neighbors who are far less sinister than the Thorwalds. Hitchcock spends a lot of time on them. Miss Lonely Hearts is an unhappy spinster. She's desperate for a man and tries several ways to get one. Some are grotesquely sad, before finally contemplating suicide. She's saved by the songwriter, whose composition draws her back from the brink. Her enthusiasm for the song is of equal value to the songwriter, who's battled alone to complete it. The second pair are the newlyweds who arrive at the apartment across from Jeff in the throes of love, and are last seen arguing about money and employment. The most interesting couple are Miss Torso and Stanley. Miss Torso is a hard-working dancer with a host of wolfish admirers. Like Penelope in the Odyssey, she waits patiently for her man Stanley to come home from the wars. The three scenarios show Jeff some flaws in his assumptions about Lisa and are often followed by a point-counterpoint discussion between the two of them. Remember what we learned about Jeff's attitudes toward women in the opening pan of his apartment? A great deal can be made of the strange negative photo of the woman on his wall that is reproduced on the corner of a fashion edition of a glossy magazine. And then there is the very odd introduction of Lisa. Before we see her, her dark shadow ominously crosses Jeff's sleeping face. Because this is Hitchcock, what should we expect? We realize there is no danger, but her face overwhelms the entire screen. Lisa is powerful and dominant from the moment she is introduced.
How's your leg?
Hurts a little.
And your stomach?
Empty as a football.
No wonder Jeff is fearful of her perfection.
And you love life?
Not too active.
Jeff watches from his apartment as his neighbors' relationships develop. Miss Lonely Hearts battles loneliness and despair. We first see her enacting a dinner date with an imaginary man.
I love you.
Jeff watches her with a mixture of dismay, sadness, and disbelief as he dines with the perfect Lisa. Jeff sarcastically remarks on all these relationships in contrast to his with Lisa, in ways that are designed to hurt or embarrass her.
Miss Lonely Hearts. Well, at least that's something you'll never have to worry about.
Oh,
Listen for Jeff's biting and nasty sarcasm.
where's that wonderful music coming from?
Oh, some songwriter over there in the studio apartment. Well, he lives alone. Probably had a very unhappy marriage.
Oh, it's enchanting. It's almost as if it were being written especially for us.
No wonder he's having so much trouble with it.
But at least you can't say the dinner isn't right.
Lisa, it's perfect. As always.
And watch its effect on Lisa. What the neighbors do is often used to reveal Jeff's thinking. And here is the songwriter whose music Lisa admires. He works constantly. Nothing comes in his way, not even housework. Jeff watches Miss Lonely Hearts prepare for an evening out. He expresses concern for the amount she is drinking and is later upset when she's nearly raped by her date. Jeff has a new understanding of how difficult the life must be for Miss Lonely Hearts when all her efforts are so misunderstood. He also sees himself as an unwelcome peeping Tom into these private lives, an interesting observation for a professional photographer. The songwriter goes through the agony of creation. He too experiences despair, and one night comes home very drunk and despondent. After her disastrous final attempt at meeting a suitable man, Miss Lonely Hearts gets out the sleeping pills, reads her Bible, and prepares to attempt suicide. At the very last minute, she is stopped, and her hope is restored by the beauty of the songwriter's tune. The arc of their song, which began at the beginning of Rear Window, is now complete. Two ordinary people who we've seen at their very worst are happy at last. Notice, too, that the heat wave has broken and that windows can at last be shut in the apartments.
I can't tell you what this music has meant to me.
At last, here they are, listening to the songwriters work together. Their mutual attraction is actually based on something quite real, their shared love of music. Our first look at the second couple, the newlyweds, is a protracted scene of matrimonial bliss, which Jeff watches with amusement. The couple's progression is designed for comic relief, and Hitchcock treats it like a banal cliché. As the days progress, the groom comes up for air several times, each time looking more and more exhausted. Jeff understands and sympathizes. And finally, the truth.
If you told me you quit your job, we wouldn't have gotten married.
Oh, honey, come on.
Hitchcock dismisses this last glimpse of the newlyweds with a hasty pan across their window. Jeff doesn't see this final failure of the marriage cliché, but of course the audience does and can make of it what they will, or what Hitchcock wants them to. Marriage isn't kisses and sex, but is much more complex and difficult. Hitchcock introduces Miss Torso, sarcastically so named by Jeff, as she dances around her apartment in her underwear with a chicken leg in her hand. She has no idea that she's being watched, of course, and unwittingly reveals her true self, an uninhibited, hard-working woman with serious skills who loves to eat and lives alone in her small apartment. Jeff's ideas about Miss Torso undergo a slow change. His initial assumption that she is simply a sex pot and an exhibitionist are put to rest. She is slowly revealed to be a serious professional dancer. She has a score of eager suitors who make assumptions about her sexual availability. Watch the point and counterpoint as Jeff sarcastically compares Lisa to Miss Torso.
We have a little apartment here that's probably about as popular as yours. You remember, of course, Miss Torso, the ballet dancer? She's like a queen bee with her pick of the drones.
say she's doing a woman's hardest job, juggling wolves.
Well, she picked the most prosperous looking one.
She's not in love with him, or any of them.
Again, the neighbors' lives reveal a great deal about both Jeff and Lisa. And finally, Stanley comes home from the war.
Stanley!
He's a short, tubby guy who also likes to eat, for whom Miss Torso has been holding out.
Hey, the Army's made me hungry. What do you got in the icebox to eat? Boy, it's good to be home.
Hitchcock spends a lot of time on these neighbors. What does Jeff learn from them? Not as much as the audience might think. His relationship with Lisa seems possibly to have improved, but largely because Lisa takes on the dangerous role of hero to prove Thorwald's guilt. This is a huge turn-on for her. Something about her is revealed that he never understood before. She is as capable as he is in the risk-taking department.
Wasn't that close? What was his reaction? I mean, when he looked at the note.
Well, it wasn't the kind of an expression that would get him a quick loan at the bank.
In fact, although Jeff is smiling in the last shot, now that he has 2 broken legs, he is even more impotent than he was when the movie began. And Lisa, although she has changed from fashionable gowns to blue jeans and loafers, still prefers her fashion magazine after she is certain Jeff is asleep. What hope does Hitchcock give this couple for a long-lasting relationship? So how do you put this concept of slow and gradual changes to work in a presentation? The key to a successful argument is to construct a series of small incremental steps toward the final message. Don't rush to your conclusion. Bring your audience along with you gradually so they can experience the incremental changes you are asking them to make. You must answer all their questions about your request before they will follow your suggestions. Just as Jeff is slowly introduced to the real Miss Torso, you can't expect your audience to care about or appreciate her revelations unless you go step by step with her to the moment Stanley arrives home. The best arguments are solidly based in a legitimate struggle that answers the tough questions. If you miss objections, glide over difficulties with your request, your final ask will be weak. The slow reveal of the depths of Miss Lonely Heart's despair makes her suicide attempt believable and sadder. Likewise, because we've seen the songwriter's creative struggle, we root for him too, and we care a great deal about the happy ending because we've seen their struggle to get there. There is amazing depth to Rear Window. We haven't explored the main topic of the movie, the suspense that made Hitchcock the master of suspense. Later, we'll take a look at the murderous Thorwald and the suspense that builds as Jeff struggles to get people around him to believe in the murder he thinks he's seen.